Out of the street corners they scream. You knew it was coming. You've been waiting for this for months. Rumour hardened into fear and now they scream at you. The sirens, their hysterical wail tearing through the white noise of the city. And you run. You run to pick up those things that can never be replaced. A picture of them in the days when they still loved you. Your mother's wedding ring. And then you turn to your shelf of games. You only have room for 5. 5 games for Doomsday. 5 Games for Doomsday is a show in which board game personalities are thrust into a cabin in the woods to outrun an oncoming disaster, but can only take 5 of their games with them. But which will they choose? My guest this week is one of the most recognisable personalities in board gaming. He turns an ambition into a career, and as president of Stronghold Games, he's been instrumental in bringing many of the most popular games to the American market from Europe, as well as publishing in-house titles. Before that, he worked in IT for blue-chip companies, and has had a 30-year history in gaming, ranging from RPGs, LARPs, and tackling the darkness that is encroaching on Middle-earth. My guest this week is Stephen Buonocore. Stephen, welcome to the cabin.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome. I love seeing you every year in Essen, as we did this year twice, right? And this is now great to do it on your podcast as well. So thank you so much.
Well, to begin, I just want to ask you, I ask everyone this, how difficult was it for you to choose the 5 games to take to the cabin?
Agony. Absolute agony. When people normally don't ask you what are your top 5 games or something like that, they just say what's your favorite game, and that's easy, and obviously it's on the list and we'll get to that. But when you say give me 5, then I have to dig deep, because I've got a lot of games I think that I've rated a 10 or close, 10, 9, whatever, just in your head you're going to say, oh, that's a perfect game, I want this game. But so I had to think about all the different situations that we'd be in a cabin, though I'm not sure I want to be locked up in a cabin with you, but with other people that it might be interesting to be locked up in a cabin with.
I mean, absolutely. I'd be an absolute nightmare. I mean, I fart a lot for a start.
Oh, jeez.
But you sent me an email after we had arranged the time, and you said, what is the criteria for this? And I sent back, a vague email that was probably super unhelpful. But what criteria did you choose when picking the 5 games?
Yes, it was completely unhelpful. I would agree with that statement very much. I literally went through just what are my top games that I just love and can almost play as much as possible. But also then picked a pretty big swath of games that you'd play party-like games, and then deep games, because I'm an omni gamer. I mean, I tend toward the lighter side of gaming, but when I go heavy, and I want to have that represented as well.
And I mean, you've made this clear by trolling everyone you know on Facebook, but you've just moved from New Jersey to Florida, and so it's a 2-part question. Firstly, how big is your collection, and how much did you have to cull it in the move, or did everything just go with you?
The trolling is mostly, by the way, for my New Jersey, New York, Northeastern United States friends, mostly. Though you could, get jealous as well if you'd like, about the fact that I live in South Florida and it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit here today. I think that translates to something like 20, I don't know, around that. It's always beautiful in South Florida. So, anyway, back to the games and the collection. I don't even know how big it is. It's around 1,000 games, give or take. I have stopped counting many years ago. I definitely culled quite a bit of the chafe, when I left New Jersey, and I gave a lot of stuff to friends, and I gave a lot of stuff to Goodwill. But I still have too many games, of course. Don't we all kind of have too many games? The collection, I posted on Facebook a while back what it looks like. When I first started putting the games on the shelves down here, I bought 2 of the 5x5 Kallax shelves, and I realized very, very quickly that it wasn't even not even close. Then I bought 3 more of them. So I have 5 5x5s, all on one wall. The way houses are built in Florida is that you'll often have one long wall on the side of your house that has no windows. So it was perfect for putting 5 of these things straight across. So it kind of, on some level, looks like a library, and on some level, looks like a work of art almost because of all the pretty colors. So that's what I have here now, and it's around 1,000 games, and I play very few of them, really, when it comes down to it.
And Borges once said, he couldn't sleep unless he was surrounded by books. When you look at your sort of 5 Calyx all stacked next to each other on the wall, how does that make you feel? Is it sort of warming?
I think it is on some level. I mean, and it's also very interesting when people walk in to your house. It's the first thing that they see is this, and they look at like, what is that? Half the people think it's a, non-gamers, they think it's a library, and the other, books, and the other ones say, are those all games? So it is warming, and, about a full Calyx, not quite, almost a full Calyx is Stronghold stuff. And if I add the indie stuff, Indie Boards and Cards, which is part of the merged company, as you know, if I would put that next to that, it isn't at the moment just because of the way we unpacked it. I never resorted. I'd go at least to a full Calyx stuff. So it does feel good. It feels like there's partly an achievement, but also partly, it's part of my personality, right? It's part of, what have been for the past forever, because I was always a gamer, and especially from the 90s up through now, being a gamer and what I have collected and what I've brought to bear and what I've achieved. So all of those things together, it makes me just feel all gushy inside.
And so how would you feel then? You've fled your home to the cabin. You've only managed to take 5 of the games with you. How would you feel about those games being consumed by a huge fireball? Are you someone who, is materialistic?
Well, I think the single most expensive thing that I own in my home is one of the games on this list. So I would feel really bad if that one got destroyed, in the fireball. And I don't think I could even carry that game plus all of the other ones, in one shot. So I hope I have a cart or something that I'm bringing it over to the cabin in, something. But it would feel very bad if it was destroyed. Yes.
Well, it'll be made clear later, but you've got a car. It's fine. Yeah,
I do own a car. Yeah. So I guess that's in the house. But after that, it's this one game.
So I want to go back to the beginning then. And, often when you guest on podcasts, you do this whole podfather thing and you act like a gangster, and you grew up in New Jersey from Italian heritage. I mean, how close was your upbringing to what all of us who don't live in New Jersey think of Italian Americans in New Jersey? Like The Sopranos and things like that.
No, it was very much not like that. Okay, so we got to start with that. No, my family is not part of the mafia or anything like that. But the things that maybe are also in people's minds that Italian families are close and they're they raise their children in a loving, caring way. That's not everybody, of course, but all of that is definitely true. And and as part of that. By the way, I grew up in New York and then moved to New Jersey, and about 50-50 between those two. So a New York Italian family, but very much like in New Jersey. Same thing. And, in all of that, part of it was spending time with the family, and then part of that would be to do some board gaming. And in the beginning, of course, when you're young, it's always that mass market stuff like Monopoly and Sorry and Trouble and those kind of things. But you as you get older, you graduate into other things, and whether you're playing them with your family or you're continuing to do that with your friends, your younger friends, it was the same thing. It was a close-knit community and and definitely a close-knit family.
And did you have these sort of huge Christmases, huge birthday parties when it was weddings? There was scores and scores of people running about, like we'd imagine, or is that something that's been created by Francis Ford Coppola?
There were, I'm a family with 4 boys in it, right? So that's fairly big to begin with. I'm the oldest of 4 boys, no sisters. and then the grandparents, of course, and on occasion others would come over from the neighborhood. So on some level, yes, but let's not think of it as 30 people for Christmas Eve or Christmas dinners. More like a dozen people, I think, would be probably. And then maybe got a little bit more when people got married and started having kids, but not the craziness of a Francis Ford Coppola movie.
So you said, you played Sorry and Trouble and that sort of thing. When did sort of, and I don't want to sound horrendously snobby here, but I'm going to, sort of, when did proper games enter your life? And was this something that, as soon as you played something like an RPG, the clouds opened, a sunbeam came down, and you sort of went, now I see?
Well, yeah, so it was, in the high school and college time frame when I'm now getting into other types of gaming. And I think that since it was high school first and computers weren't quite there yet, it was RPGs. I was a big role player for the longest time. Dungeons and Dragons was my jam for a very long time. It's only been fairly recently when I stopped playing role-playing games, only because of the move and various things like that. I don't have a group anymore. But so it was role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons being the biggest one, Vampire the Masquerade as well, and a whole slew of other systems. And then computers, became a thing, and they got into the household, and I was maybe first kid on the block to have an Apple II Plus, not even Apple IIe back then. So there was those sort of black and white vector kind of graphic games and things like that I got into. And then CCGs came into fashion, so I played some Magic the Gathering and Vampire the Eternal Struggle, which was a card game based on the Vampire the Masquerade stuff. And then the bigger computers got bigger, so we had MMOs. We started playing those. And then, during the Euro revolution, the Euro game revolution, when they started coming across, and Rio Grande, got to give them huge props for Jay Tumbleson at Rio Grande Games, bringing over those games from Europe. Catan, of course, coming over. And so many of those games. Ticket to Ride was coming over. Puerto Rico, that was definitely a Rio Grande game. Amun-Re by the great Reiner Knizia. I started playing those games and just saying, this is the style of things that I want to do with my friends and sit across a table and compete or cooperate. That was the thing that I just liked to do. So I got rid of the electronics and things like that. Kept doing the role-playing, because that's also a tabletop or across-the-table experience, and focused mostly on board games. And then it sort of became maybe how I could do this, in the industry at some point of my life.
And so you took sort of role-playing on sort of to its logical conclusion, and you sort of got into LARPing. Now, I've got no experience with LARPing whatsoever, and I've just seen the video, with the people throwing beanbags at each other and things. Is it like that? Or, have you ventured into the sort of Nordic LARP and that sort of more serious-minded stuff?
No, I mean, this was the LARPs that I did were exclusively based on Vampire the Masquerade. So if you take that system and then you extrapolate that to having 40 or 50 people playing it with numerous storytellers, game masters hanging around to adjudicate the challenges that one might do when you're interacting in various rooms or areas. And you have to change it a little bit, of course, because you're not sitting on a table with dice necessarily. So we did that, and it's just an extension, as you kind of said there, of sitting around a table and interacting. It emphasizes, of course, the role-playing portion and the getting into the character and the, putting on the costume if it applies to your character. I enjoyed it immensely. A really well-run LARP is a fantastic experience. Now, the really badly run ones can be just 3-4 hours of boredom. So those aren't good. But I was a storyteller as well in a LARPing group in New Jersey for a while. And I like to say that the game that we ran was one of the best ones that was out there at the time, because we put a lot of time into giving each player that showed up their backgrounds. I mean, the players would create their backgrounds, but then we would give them their storyline. Like, this is the kind of stuff that maybe you should be looking into the city, because you've heard about the Ventru doing these bad things in this area, and the Tremere. These are all the vampire clans, and they're doing things, and maybe you need to investigate this, and this person may be your ally because of so and so, because of the knowledge you have. When your storytellers put that much information and give you that many clues into what's happening, you can have a very good time of investigating and interacting with people and things like that. So, had a great time doing that for a bunch of years, and that ended up stopping when some of those, games just, fell by the wayside. But it's a really good way of doing role playing, in my opinion.
And sort of what clan did you gravitate towards?
I played a maniacal Tremere for a while. That was that was when I was playing an NPC in a LARP that I was running, and Clan Tremere was a very powerful clan in the city, and it was very much an adversary to the prince of the city at the time, and they are a very powerful clan in the way that Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, the original one, is written. They're now on a different different version of the system, which I did not see and get into. And I think Tremere was actually written out because they were too powerful. But that's the one I usually gravitated toward. And if I didn't do that, I might play a Bruja so that I would, beat some people up. Metaphorically, of course,
Well, of course.
Of course.
So your first game then is Betrayal at House on the Hill. What is it about this game that draws you towards it?
So this game, first of all, has the whole hidden traitor, which you don't even understand at first, because you're all on the same side when the game begins. But then a story unfolds in front of you as different things happen, and then finally the haunt occurs, and someone will be the bad guy. And they've got to go, and they have a completely different game to play. They get more information, and they have a different objective than everyone else. It is ripe with story. The game mechanics are very odd, some would say, unbalanced, and it sometimes the game almost doesn't make sense the way it plays out, and you just don't care. At least the way that I play the game, I just don't care, because in the end, you really have this story that you're telling about what happened, and then Joe got was the one who was the haunt, who was the part of the haunt, and then we and Mary and I had to go after him, and we had to find the dog to help us out, and all of this story is then told in that game. I absolutely love the game. I've yet to play it with the expansion, which I bought immediately, but of course never played it. So I got to get it back to the table again and bring the expansion in as well.
I mean, how important? A lot of people talk about this, and it's sort of metastasized from the discussion of theme into the discussion of narrative. So, how important for you is narrative in games, and how well do you think Betrayal delivers it?
Betrayal's narrative is the game, because if it didn't have a story to tell you, it's not truly much of a game mechanically. You go, you search, you get some cards. This thing is going to happen at some point. You're not sure when, and some of the rules don't even make sense. The underground lake is on the top floor because they made a mistake in the original rules and things like that. But the story in this game is so vivid, and of course, you tend to role play a little bit. If you're the bruiser, I do anyway. I role play almost all my games. But if you're the big jock from college, you're dumb, but you're strong, so you can go open the door and do this and that. So I just love the narrative that's in this game.
And so when you start playing a game of Betrayal, how much do you want to be the traitor? Because I often find with games that have a traitor mechanic, I'm dying to be the traitor right from the beginning. Is that the same with you?
Absolutely. Yes, I 100% want to be the traitor, but I'm okay not being, because then someone else will have that fun. Yeah, and the funny thing on a tangent is that, in games where it's truly hidden traitor, like in the Indie Boards and Cards catalog, the Resistance or Avalon, where everybody has this different role in the game, or Dark Moon in the Stronghold catalog, I'm always accused of being the traitor. No matter what happens, it's always, you are talking too much of the traitor. It's like, no, that's just me. I talk a lot and I try to get involved with the table talk and all. So, yeah, I want to be the traitor. I got to admit that. But, you are only X percentage of the time, and that's cool as well.
So I want to go on now and talk about your life before you became a professional gaming person. So I read through your bio and it said that you have an MBA in finance. What are the kind of things that you learn when doing an MBA in finance?
The ins and outs of running companies, I guess, is a good thing. I mean, I also, my undergraduate degree is also a business degree. It's computers and management. I continued that at New York University with the MBA. And I knew that, I always knew that I was going to be on Wall Street, but always believed I'd be in IT. And I'm like one of the few people that my education is exactly what I have done up until gaming for my entire career. So I have undergraduate in computers, and I was in IT the whole time. Management, I managed the team, very, very early on in my career and continued through the entire thing. And in finance, I was always working for a financial firm the entire time. And in that entire thing, you pick up what are business smarts. How do you run various aspects of a company? What is their proper accounting procedures? You pick up a lot of that when you're just doing the company as well. But generally, your education is going to give you a grounding in the right principles that you need to bring to bear in any business, whether you're actually running the business or you're just part of the business itself.
And so, what did you actually do on Wall Street? Because when I think of Wall Street, I think of the movies. I think of the guys with their feet on the desks bellowing down the phones or waving the bits of paper on the stock exchange floor. What were you doing? I'm in the IT side, right? Information technology, computers. I'm the back end of everything. So I was never on the business side and never really wanted to be. Too much pressure, I think, in that side. Of course, you can make a tremendous amount of money there, but that was never my thing. I started the way most people start, back in the day, programming computers, and then moved to the infrastructure side of IT, where you are going to either get applications onto a desktop for people to use in various ways, packaging them, or setting up data centers and networks. I was in the end of my career, I was a project manager in infrastructure. So basically everything that would happen before the users got to a computer would be what I did. And it was a mind-numbingly boring type of thing to do, but it paid very well because, computers generally pay well. And when you're, working in a financial company, it's well compensated. So the movement from that to game industry was obviously a very frightening thing. Why would I want to leave the very lucrative thing to do this potentially lucrative, but who knows, could be a big flop thing. And so, all of these movies come out with the guys in the striped shirts and the women and the drugs and all of this. And you spent time on Wall Street. How realistic is this? Or is this just myth-making? Is the sort of Wall Street environment a lot more sober than we would assume?
There was probably a lot of that early on, like in my career, but not that I was part of it. Trust me, really not. Again, being the technology side, not at all. But I was very close to the business at various points, and some of the things that I did see, nothing crazy, but some of the things I did see were things that you would never, ever, ever see. Like, now in modern times, due to the laws and just
could you give us a?
I
could
don't
you give us some
really want to
No?
because it's a little bit. I can't. I don't even want to mention it. Let's put it this way. How about like seeing a stripper come onto the trading floor? That was pretty weird, right? A stripper come onto the trading floor for someone's birthday or something like that. So that was probably, I guess I can say that. That's probably the weirdest thing that I saw. And I happened to be working very close to the traders at the time doing coding. It was early in my career. So this is very early on. Now, you would never, ever see such a thing anymore because it's just, that's sexist. It's wrong. It's just a really bad idea to even consider doing such a thing these days. So Wall Street, I think, has certainly changed. There's still plenty of excesses and things like that, but, I don't think that there's much of the 3 martini lunch and things like that goes on these days. People have to figure out ways of being serious, and making money and performance is all of what it is about. And again, that's the business side. I was the back office. I'm in the infrastructure of computers side almost my entire career.
And so you were there, I guess, because you started Stronghold in 2009. So were you there in 2008 during the crash? And how much of a seismic shock was it to that part of the world? And did that prompt your move into gaming?
That is a great question. And the answer is yes, I was there. I was working for a small company. You might have heard of them, called Lehman Brothers, basically, which almost brought down the entire world economy, literally. In IT, and the technology group there was world class. However, the head of the company and some of the management of the company were as corrupt as you can possibly know. And there's some great books written on it. We won't even go into that. But once that crashed, and a few months after that, I was laid off. I hooked up with a subsidiary of Lehman Brothers that did not go into bankruptcy because they are a wealth management division. They take your money, they make money or lose money, but they don't take risk. So they spun themselves back out, and I hooked up with there and did quite a lot of great work there. But as I did that, with that crash, I made sure that I got myself back on my feet completely. I realized that I wanted to try to chart my own course. So yes, at that moment or right around that moment, I said, I've been following the market of gaming. I'm a gamer. I've been following the market. There's a lot of people out there that were doing things that just didn't look to make sense to me. I said, I can do this better. Let me see how this will work out. So in late 2009, Stronghold Games was formed, and then by 2010 we had our first game out.
So your next game then is a game that I didn't see becoming quite as popular as it's become, although I thought it was amazing when I first played it. This is Codenames. How revolutionary is this game, do you think?
Codenames is so good that I every time I'm on a podcast or anybody mentions it to me, and of course not my game, right? Not in the Stronghold Games catalog. This is Czech Games edition. Codenames is so good that I tell everyone they should take all those copies of Monopoly they have on their shelves, throw them in the garbage, and replace it with Codenames. You can play it with kids. You can play it with the adults. It's just that good of a game, and it's funny once you play it, you realize why didn't anybody else think of this? Vlada Chvátil is a genius, and he comes up with these ideas, and he's constantly on the cutting edge of doing just amazing amazing things. In and of itself, it's as simple a thing as you can possibly think of. But when he brought it together, and he was the first one that did, it just makes for an amazing family/party game. And that's why I have it on my list. It is a perfect game to have for almost all occasions.
And so I remember the year before it came out, there was a gathering of friends, and Vlaada Chvátil brought it there, and sort of Mike Fitzgerald. I remember Mike Fitzgerald talking about it. I remember Jeff Engelstein talking about it. This new word game from Vlaada Chvátil, and it's amazing. Were you at that gathering of friends? And, you know, did you feel that sort of ripple of excitement around this game?
You don't, at the gathering of friends, that's Alan Moon's convention, it's his party, I guess it's closer to do. It's, you know, he just invites people to come over to a place in Niagara Falls each year. And he's been doing it for 30 years, and I've been going for the last, 8 years or something. Basically, a little after I started Stronghold, I was invited. Sure, people were talking about it as being really cool, and that it was going to be good, but nobody realizes, nobody can ever really predict this. You can't predict a phenomenon. Nobody could predict that when Dominic Vaccarino brought out Dominion, it would become the next great mechanic in gaming. Nobody could have predicted that Codenames would now have sold, I don't know the number, but I'll make up a number that's probably fairly accurate, 4 million copies, worldwide in all of its editions, and is now everywhere. There was certainly excitement, but there's excitement every year for something that one of the designers there is doing, or many of the designers is doing. I remember when Vlaada or CGE was showing off Alchemist, huge buzz, but I don't know that many people are playing Alchemist anymore. I mean, I'm sure there are, but it's not the hugest thing. But when they were showing off Alchemist, people were going crazy for that. So you just never know, based on that first premiere, if this is really going to be the huge thing, or it's just going to be, hey, this is a really cool thing, and it sells, through its print run.
And so how do you think, where does Vlaada Chvátil rank as not so much as a great designer, because I don't think that's in doubt, but as an innovator of games?
I think he's at the absolute top of the list of game innovators. Almost everything. Now, no one can do it every time, of course, but almost every one of his games just shows another spark of genius in it. So he is absolutely one of the greatest designers ever, and certainly one of the greatest innovators ever as well.
So I want to go on now and talk about what you're most well known for, and this is Stronghold Games. So we've kind of touched on it, but firstly, why a games company? And second, where did the name Stronghold come from?
Well, why a games company is, I think we've basically covered that, is that I think that I was studying the market, so I thought that I could do something better, and not only that, but I could chart my own course. And I never really thought Stronghold Games would become what it is today. That I did not, because again, you can't predict these things. I thought I would have a nice job to retire into, and when I wanted to really get off of Wall Street. But I thought that I would, when I did that, I'd be in my 60s, and I would just okay, I'll stop working in IT, and now I'll just do this as my retirement job and continue making a little bit of money. But obviously it exploded in 2016, and I had to leave IT. And why the name Stronghold? I called my house the Stronghold. That was my house in New Jersey. So I just took the name of that, and I said, oh, this is going to be Stronghold Games. And of course, once I left New Jersey, which is the Stronghold, now I consider that the Stronghold North, and this, where I am now, is the Stronghold South.
So when was the first time you thought, wow, this is actually a career now? This is not just some little thing that I'm doing for fun.
Yeah, I realized that it was going to work and money was going to be made within the first few years. Probably in 2014, I'm okay, this company is doing well and it can sustain itself. I can actually take money out and things like that. It's going to still be a struggle because I have to do 2 jobs. But this could work. So I'll be able to retire into this. This is cool. And then the snowball kept going. It kept getting bigger and bigger and more good games. And finally, by 2016, I realized I can't do both. This is too big. The company's making very good money. I'm going to take a shot. I mean, this might be the worst thing I ever did, but this could really work out. So in 2016, I started planning okay, I'm going to leave, do my, sorry guys, thank you very much to my friends in IT, and I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to just do this full time. I did, and that was in 2016. And by complete chance, not because of Terraforming Mars, hit that year. So obviously at that point, it teleported the company to an entirely different level. But people say like, oh, obviously you left your real job because of terraforming. No. I was already committed. I was already on the path. I was already going. I had already given my notice. And then we got terraforming, and it blew up to be, one of the biggest games in the industry.
And, I wouldn't be gauche enough to ask you for figures or anything, but how important has Terraforming Mars been to Stronghold?
It's very important. Now, you can weather the storms. You have something. I mean, we just call it, as a joke, we call it the franchise. You have a consistent, huge selling game with all of its expansions. You have all of that revenue coming all of the time, and now you can do the other projects that you want to do. You can maintain a company where, especially during the merger, where we now can hire specialty. We have a marketing person. We have a conventions director. We have social media people. We have game development. We have all of these people within the company that can just do their job and focus on their job. And we have a consistent revenue stream to make sure that they get paid. And then we can find other great games, and hopefully we find even more games that are like that over time.
And so, yeah, you just mentioned it obliquely, but you merged with Indie Boards and Cards. Why was that the right merger for Stronghold at that time?
It was a time to do it because the right time in the industry. You can see that there's a lot of competition. Smaller companies are going to struggle more, but with bigger companies that come together, you can then have people with new skill sets that can do certain things. I had mentioned the skill sets that we actually went out and hired and or told people they don't have to do this kind of work, but they can just focus on this. When you bring 2 catalogs together that are very complementary and not overlapping, it was perfect. Indie Boards and Cards focuses mostly on smaller games and social games, and Stronghold Games usually focuses on larger games and partnerships. So very complementary. We are together. We become additive instead of basically shrinking. So it was a perfect time and a perfect merger of 2 different but very strong catalogs.
And so looking back, so you started in 2009, it's 2019 now, this is a decade of Stronghold. How close are you to what you originally intended, or have you completely exceeded that?
Yeah, I've exceeded completely, 100%. I'm way over what I thought it was going to be. And that's simply me at the time thinking it was going to be just something to do and make some money as the retirement occurs, and then it became this explosion. And of course, I'm not just saying that and I'm being modest, but it also, and I'm not, because I was so smart I got to this place, the industry exploded over that time. So if it wasn't for, the tenfold increase in revenue in the industry over the last 10 years, maybe even more than that, I have to go think about that. We certainly wouldn't be having this conversation even. We wouldn't be talking about the great success. We'd say Stronghold, they're a brand, that kind of thing. But we have so many people now playing games in the industry worldwide that things have gone very well for a number of smartly run companies, and I'd like to think that, the merged company of Indie Boards and Cards and Stronghold Games is definitely one of those.
And are you happier working in games than you were in IT?
When you have a passion and you can make it your livelihood, there's no answer to that question other than yes, of course.
So your next game is one of yours, one that you publish, and this is Flamme Rouge. So why are you taking this one to the cabin?
So Flamme Rouge, and for those who don't know, though it's keeps every month it goes up higher and higher in the rankings on Board Game Geek. It's a bicycle racing game, and that's a very European thing more than certainly not really an American thing. We barely we don't know about bicycle racing. We know the Tour de France. That's a thing. It's over in Europe.
Let's not talk about Lance Armstrong.
We don't even we've disavowed all knowledge of that guy anyway. But bicycle racing, it's not a real big thing here. But once you play this game, I confidently can say that this is the best racing game in the market. It happens to use bicycle racing because it's so thematic to the way the bikers race in things like the Tour de France. You get your team of bikers and you've got to get one of them, just one of them, across the finish line. So they'll synergize on each other. You'll have the roller, which will be kind of more steady, and he'll protect the sprinter to make its power move toward the end. The game plays out differently every time, especially because you have many, many, many track configurations that you can create with this. I've never played a game of Flamme Rouge that falls flat. Every time I introduce somebody, they're like, "Oh, this is great. Let's do this again." And you play it and you play it. Not only the best, it's just the best racing game out there. So if you're interested and you like racing games of any kind, be it car racing or any kind of racing, this is the game that you have to try out, Flamme Rouge.
I mean, you said that, cycle racing is not a thing in America. What was it about this game that made you think, well, yeah, I can bring this out to the American market and it'll make some money for me? I just do great games. I mean, theme is one, and I love theme in games. But I just want to put out great games. So when this game was introduced to me by my now strategic partner, Lautapellet.fi out in Finland, the president there, Tony, showed me the game, and I'm like, this is weird. First of all, it's bicycle racing, and so it's not really American, but let me check this out. And we played it, and it was just like, I just can't get enough of this. And so there's also bluffing elements sort of in there. Like, am I going to try to break out now, or am I going to wait back? So all of these little things come into play in this game. And once you play it, this is just awesome. And the game, once you have the expansion too, you can actually play it not only 5-6 players, but you can play it from 1 to 12 players. I've never played the 12-player game where every one of the players has one rider instead of a group of riders. But I'm going to do this. This is going to be an epic game. I'm going to need a really big table to do this, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So I want to talk now about the state of the board game industry, because there's a lot of, renting of garments and worry about the industry, and people talk about it a lot. I mean, how healthy do you think the industry is right now?
So we are in a very odd place right now. And the reason is that there is simply too much product coming out. Just too much. Distributors are flooded. The retailers can't keep up with things that are going out. They just miss things. So while we're still in a growth period, we're in a much slower growth period, almost to the point of, leveling off. So I would consider the industry, and every industry gets like this, and the economies get like this. Everything is cyclical. You go through steep growth, mid growth, slow growth, and then into recession. That's the way economies work. And then boom, they come out and they start the cycle again. Right now, I'd like to say that we are in late growth, almost approaching recession period for this industry. And what's going to happen is, I've been talking about this on my podcast, Board Games Insider, if I may plug. Plug away. I believe we're going to see lots of consolidation and some major names going away. I think distribution is very, very, very stressed. We're going to see U.S. distributors going under, for one. But others across the world, with Asmodee taking very big chunks of distribution out. So that's going to happen. We're going to see some publishers. I believe that we're going to see some name publishers, not be able to do this anymore or scale themselves so far back that they basically become very, very, very tiny, and you may not even hear about them anymore. So I would consider that there is a serious problem in the industry, but I'm not by any stretch of the imagination ringing the death knell. I think that gaming is here to stay for a very long time.
How distorting is Asmodee on the environment? Do they dominate everything within hobby gaming?
The net effect of Asmodee over, since they have come to be what they are, has been positive. However, in certain portions of the industry, it's certainly been a negative event. In Europe, they have basically continued to buy distributors left and right until the competition there has basically they're vertically integrating themselves, and therefore the distribution there is being hurt, and they're going to their people there are going to go out of business. I think this is going to happen in the U.S. They've basically essentially now become their own distributor in the United States. So their deal with Alliance, I think, is going to go away in the fairly near future. They are dominating, of course, on some level, but I always say this: there's one Asmodee, and there's 1,000 of us. So when a gamer looks at something, they're still looking at brands, and they're still looking at a game, and they'll say, "Whoa, what's Stronghold doing?" Boom, they'll buy here. Oh, what's one of the Asmodee brands? What's Fantasy Flight doing? They'll look at them. So I like to think of it: one of them, hundreds of us. I think there needs to be less of this other tier, but the cream is going to rise, and the good companies, and hopefully we're one of them, is going to be around quite a long time in that second tier of publishers.
Just today I saw that Portal and, Board Games Insider with Ignacy, so Ignacy well. Portal are kickstarting their new Stronghold expansion, and other game companies who previously, you yourself have done it now, are going into Kickstarter. Why do you think that is, where companies... There seemed to be a trend previously where you wanted... The sign of you becoming an established company was that you stopped using Kickstarter. And now companies are going into using Kickstarter more. Why do you think that is?
There are a few reasons. I think the number one, of course, it takes away risk, right? It's going to take away a lot of your risk. And you don't know what your print run should be until you have a demand. And as part of this entire cyclical nature, print runs are going down, 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 which is very, very, very dangerous. Kickstarter takes away that risk. But also, so many gamers, for whatever reason, have come to view Kickstarter as the only way to get games. They don't go to game stores. They don't look anywhere else. They don't go to conventions, some of them. They go onto Kickstarter, and this is where they want to see their games. They want to see them there. They want to ask the questions. Maybe they want to be obnoxious about things too, because there's a lot of that goes on a Kickstarter. And they want to look there. So Kickstarter becomes a huge marketing event. Case in point, CMON not only grew up as a Kickstarter company, they have said that Kickstarter is so important to their business model that they must use it to survive. Now CMON's the second largest company in the industry. It's Asmodee, way, way, way up there, and then CMON next, and then there's quite a few of us that are basically pretty close to right below that level. They're a publicly traded company. we talk about this on Board Games Insider, this is what we do, publicly traded company. So you can find out all kinds of information about a company that's publicly traded. And one of them is their report to shareholders. And they talk about Kickstarter like, if we're not on Kickstarter, if we can't crowdfund, we have serious problems. So we will continue to be using Kickstarter forever, basically, they say. And it is a huge thing because every time they do one of these Kickstarters and they know how to do them, they do them great with all their miniatures in them. They make several $1 million. And you do that a few times a year and numbers start adding up. So it's a very important event to run a Kickstarter.
And do you think it's going to come to a point where mid-sized companies have to use Kickstarter, have to be like CMON and say, you know, Kickstarter is just a vital component of our business model?
I think at this point it's basically a vital component of just about everyone's business model. And that is one of the reasons why Stronghold Games now does Kickstarters for its major releases. And back to the merger, once the merger occurred, I now have within the company expertise in doing this. I had done one Kickstarter in like 2014 and it did very well, but it's such a nightmare at running. But now with Indie Boards and Cards, they have 50 Kickstarters, successful Kickstarters under their belt. Therefore, doing some games, not usually the partnership games, the ones that I'm bringing over that are already published, but new games that we have gotten to design and publishing in-house. These are the games that we want to then do on Kickstarter for its risk/marketing event, risk mitigation, and the fact that we get all this marketing out of it.
So your next game then is, we've talked about it before, it's your sort of, I guess it's your premiere title, and this is Terraforming Mars. And I remember approaching this game because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it came out of the Essen, and there was all this buzz. It was super buzzy, this game, and then it took off and it was hugely successful, and I guess still is. What do you attribute that to?
The first reason I think Terraforming Mars is so big is because it is that good of a game. And I mean, its ratings, number 3 of all time on Board Game Geek, speak, volumes to the fact that how good this game is. I believed from the beginning that another reason why Terraforming Mars is what it is because of the theme. Mars is as big in our collective consciousness as almost anything. We're going to go to Mars. Yes, in my lifetime, and I'm a lot older than you, in my lifetime, I fully believe that I'm going to see human beings step foot on the planet Mars. And The Martian, the movie came out, which we saw that happen. All of this stuff together makes Mars a huge topic, an interesting thing. And then finally, the game plays out so thematically that it feels like in the end of that game, you've actually done the work of terraforming the planet Mars. Jacob Frixelius is a doctor of physical sciences, and he used actual science and projected future science, because the game, technically, it starts in 2400-ish, the year 2400, and goes for about 14 generations. So that ends up in like the 2800s. And he used what he believed to be the science that we could bring to bear then. And all of that just wraps into an experience with the great gameplay that is just wonderful. And Terraforming Mars is something that I can play again and again.
I mean, do you think The Martian affected sales of Terraforming Mars?
Only to the extent that it added more Mars into everybody's brains. And the Curiosity rover, and the continued, indications of biology that potentially is on Mars, the gases that the rovers are finding, and Mars quakes, and all this stuff together, I think, has added to Mars being in everybody's heads, and therefore it has helped Terraforming Mars. But a game has got to be a great game or else it's not going to either sell that well and or not be as highly rated. In the case, we have the games like Exploding Kittens, of course. It did 8 million, and Cards Against Humanity. I mean, these games are huge sellers. Are they great games? I'd like to say not. And they're, and gamers will rank them on Board Game Geek and rank them accordingly. Terraforming Mars, it is that good of a game, and it happens to be that thematic of a game. It just makes sense.
I mean, so where does it... anyone who has heard you talk on a podcast for longer than 5 minutes knows what your favourite game is. But
yes.
Where does Terraforming Mars rank in your sort of list of top games?
Well, I put it in the top 5. I guess it is in the top 5, games. It's of the games on here, it's sort of my nice, mid-weight thinky game. Because Terraforming Mars is certainly not a heavy game, but it's not a light game. It's a game where when you bring it out, you got to do a little thinking. If you're going to win this game, I got to think a little bit to figure out what strategy based on my card play and stuff like that. So, I mean, I would put it when I'm, it's so hard to say what a favorite of anything is, though the next game I've always said is my favorite. So that one is my favorite. But with Terraforming, I'm going to put it as my, top of the list for that midweight, I want to do a little Euro-y, crunchy kind of stuff right now kind of game. So I'm not sure that answers the question, but that's the best I could do.
So in terms of being an evergreen title, do you think that Terraforming Mars is the Ticket to Ride of heavier games? It is the one that just keeps selling within that weight category? Well,
it's our Ticket to Ride, I guess you can say. It's never going to sell that many games, of course. Not going to sell Catan level or Ticket to Ride level. I mean, those games are so approachable, and you literally can play those games, right, with your grandma almost right now. Just about anyway. Those are what we call the gateway. That gets you to the next level. Maybe that gets you to almost to terraforming. Maybe you need a couple of steps before terraforming. It's certainly... it's right now, I mentioned it's the 3rd ranked game on Board Game Geek. It's the 1st ranked non-legacy game. So that's an interesting statement to make, right? The first 2 games are legacy games. But Terraforming Mars is just the 1st ranked of all, the strategy games. Let's call it that. Never going to be to the sales of the true heavy selling Ticket to Ride Catan type games, but it will be an evergreen title forever. And its position and the way gamers talk about it, I believe, shows that.
So I want to talk now about the future. So what do you, as a person, have coming up in the future, and what's the future of Stronghold Games look like?
My future? Want to know what I'm doing? Well, I'm going out to dinner tonight with some good friends. Oh, no. Okay, that's not what you mean. We here at Stronghold Games and Indie Games Studios, that's the name of the merged company. We're going to continue leveraging similar strategies. It's not like you're going to change things when things are going well. We're going to continue to look for great games that come out of Essen. I mean, we just came back from Metatopia, which is a convention in New Jersey. I had to go back to New Jersey, cold New Jersey, for a week. And we tested games, all the games we brought back from Essen. That's one part of our strategy. We're going to continue to look at more games that we can get from a designer and develop in-house. And that's what our team in Indianapolis does. And we're going to leverage Kickstarter in the correct ways, doing give or take 4 or 5 Kickstarters per brand per year. So we did 8. We did exactly 8 of them in 2019. Did 4 under the Stronghold catalog. We did 4 under the Indie Boards and Cards catalog. We're probably going to continue to do the same thing with correct games. That makes sense for that. What I think we will end up doing, maybe that is a bit of a difference, is that Stronghold will do a few less games this year. I say that, literally I've said that every year for 6 years. And every year for 6 years I've either done more or the same number of games. Only because the market is so saturated. And new game titles, even though they've got some buzz going out of Essen or something, they just are not getting enough traction due to the glut of titles. So I can see us doing some less games, but I'm not saying we're going to go down from, we think we did about 25 this year and the same the year before. I don't think we're going to go down to 4 games. We're still going to be, 10 or so games per year. We do not have the schedule built out for next year. That we're going to do in next week at Board Game Geek Con. The whole company basically meets there. We have some strategic meetings there. But that's basically it. I think we're going to see a lot more of the stuff we have and maybe constrain the number of games to focus more heavily on titles that we know that we can push hard.
And so, you published an absolute bona fide classic this year. It was the first game that was put into the Board Game Geek database, and that was Die Macher. Is there a game that you dream of publishing, that you would love to have the Stronghold logo on the front of the box?
Yes, maybe, but it would be associated with a current IP that I have already, and I've gotten in too much trouble for talking about the future. I actually have gotten in a lot of trouble with the IP holders for talking about things out of turn. But they love me over at Fricks Games. That's all. That's all. There's the hint for you. But there's nothing else like, I want to work with really, really smart people. So I constantly go out there and, we're constantly picking great designers to work with. I met this year in Essen for the first time. I met Wolfgang Warsch. Now I have more Wolfgang Warsch games in my catalog than anybody else does because I have all of his roll and writes. And I have his game Subtext, his drawing game that he has as well. So I've got a lot of Wolfgang Warsch games. I finally get to meet him this year in Essen, and he didn't have anything to pitch me. He's been working as a dad basically. I think over the last year, so he didn't have any brand new stuff. But we just got a good chance. I said, listen, I'm a big fan. I'd like to meet you, and he said that's great because I'm a fan of yours. So we just had a really brief meeting at the Stronghold Games booth. I want to work with him more. I want to work with other great designers, and we have our whole great designer series that we have in our line because I pay homage to these people, the designers, which are the backbone of the industry. So that's what I want to do. I want to work with smart people and continue bringing out great games for gamers.
So I got into gaming in 2012, sort of big time, and sort of you were quite, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. You were sort of ubiquitous around the gaming scene, and I got into gaming through YouTube and the Dice Tower, and you were often on the Dice Tower and often around talking about games and gaming. I mean, to what extent do you think you've helped to shape what modern gaming is now?
No, that would be much too full of myself to say that I have had any influence whatsoever on the shape of gaming or even the industry, and I don't think that I have. I mean, I would like to credit the people who have truly helped the industry. People like Tom Bassel, my nemesis. I love Tom, but we have this frenemy relationship. People like that who've created content for gamers to get out there. The publishers, we do our best to find great games. And me being on the Dice Tower or on hundreds of podcasts to get the moniker the Podfather, that's me, helping my brand. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm not shaping an industry. I don't think. I think I've had an impact in that my catalog has been good and people have tempted to mimic a little bit some of the things that I did, like going overseas and bringing more games, but I didn't create that either. Rio Grande was doing that before I was here. I think my biggest contribution to the industry is to create relationships between people. I mean, I think I've done a very good job of that, and I'd like that to be like my legacy. That everybody who really got to know me knows that I am a passionate person about the industry and simply a good guy, someone you want to work with, someone you want to have a beer with, someone you want to socialize with. I'd like that to be my biggest legacy in this industry.
So your last game then is what you say is your favorite game. It's an absolute classic. It's certainly one of my favorite games. And this is War of the Ring. So why is this your favorite game?
Okay, we can start out with the fact that I'm a huge Tolkien nerd. I've read all the books. I think I've read the Silmarillion 3 times, so you can imagine how many times I've read the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit.
Good ones.
Yeah, the ones that really are like stories. Oh, the Silmarillion is a hard read. It's a hard read. But I've read it, and I have my little Tolkien companion next to me, so I keep looking things up to make sure that I'm understanding what the references are and everything like that. So War of the Ring is just a joy for a Tolkienophile. It is so dripping with the theme that plays out in the Lord of the Rings books, and of course the movies, which were phenomenal. So you can start with that. And then you continue to, the game is absolutely brilliant in its implementation and in its balance. Every time I play that game, without fail, it comes down to the last turn where either the last stronghold on Middle-earth is taken over by the shadow player, or for the shadow win, of course, or Frodo dunks the ring in Mount Doom, or Frodo succumbs to corruption, which of course is another way the shadow player can win the game. So it plays out so close every time, which is an amazing thing for what really is a card-driven war game. Not only card-driven war game, but dice-driven action dice selection game. The mechanics are melded so seamlessly together that it just plays amazingly. And how the designers did this to make it come to be such a close game all the time, I don't know. This is why I always say, people say like, yeah, you want to be a designer, don't you? I'm like, no, I'm not smart enough to be a designer. I'm smart enough to run a game company, to pick great games, to know what a great game is, but I cannot design games. And these guys were brilliant in bringing this game out. And why is this the game that, and by the way, and this is the game that is also like my most valuable possession after my house and my car, yes, because I own the collector's edition of War of the Ring.
I'm so jealous, by the way.
Yes, yeah, I know. And every time I say it, people are like, oh. And I got that like right after it was released. I couldn't get one anymore from distributors. So Zev Schlesinger, my good friend, right, who owns Z-Man Games, now is with WizKids. He actually had me. He goes, I'm never gonna play this thing. It's so big. Just pay me for, the game what I had. And I'm like, you sure, man? He goes, yeah. So I literally paid him just what he paid for the game. Actually, a little bit more than he paid for the game, just because I felt so like, thank you, man. It was like, at the time, it was a $400 game. Now, I don't think anybody will let it part from their hands for, under like $2,500 or something like that. And I wouldn't, there's no price on the planet that I would take for, to have this game leave, because I love the game so much. I love the way that they implemented the collector's edition with the gorgeous painted miniatures and the way oversized board. And the entire thing is in this wooden game box that opens up like a book, and it looks like a book. That you look like a hobbit when you're holding it because it's so big in your arms. On every level, this is my favorite game. And it also plays differently every time you play it. So, War of the Ring. If you haven't tried it, just play even the regular edition. It's brilliant.
And do you have a favourite side that you like to play? I've played it quite a few times, and I can't get behind playing the Shadow team. I always like to play the Hobbits.
Well, it's the more interesting play, is to play the Free Peoples, because they have more ways to win or lose. The shadow player essentially has one way. They've got to take over 10 points worth of strongholds and towns, villages, and cities, whatever they call the various places there. They have to do that. So it's war. Keep bringing out the orcs. Keep bringing out, get out the big bad guys. Get everybody out and kill things. The free peoples have got to be stealthy. They've got to be careful. There's much more strategy that goes on. A lot of people say it's balanced toward the shadow player more, but my plays have always been so close, that it's 50-50 or really close to that.
So, if you were going to be one of the race of the free peoples, which one would you be?
Like, if I really was?
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
Are you most like an elf? Are you most like a dwarf? Are you most like a wizard?
I, sir, would be a hobbit. I would go and live in New Zealand in one of the hobbit holes they built out there for the movie, and I would drink plenty of ale and sing and dance and be the happiest person on Middle Earth.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of say that I would be as dignified as an elf, but I'm absolutely a hobbit too. So.
Oh, the hobbits, and that's sort of the whole thing about a lot of things, that they were there were these little people that just minded their own business in this little corner of the continent, and all of a sudden several of them were thrown into this epic good versus evil struggle. So, yes, I would like to say that I'd like to be a hobbit.
So, one last question then. So you're heading out of your home as the apocalypse is approaching. You're whizzing through the Everglades, having crocodiles. No, it's alligators down there, isn't it? Snap at the bumper of your car. And you go around a corner. The back seat flies open. 4 of the games fly out into the swamps and are lost forever. Which game do you hope is sitting on the back seat?
Of course it is War of the Ring, the collector's edition. It's still there. And I can then take it to the cabin and play it forever with, hopefully, someone that I like.
So, if people want to get hold of you, see what you're up to, see what Stronghold Games are up to, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. So, how do you do that? The website is strongholdgames.com. We keep our list of releases right there so you can see when things are coming out. Try to keep it as up to date as we can. At the moment, you can also order things from the website. That's going to be taken away soon, so go there soon. We're going to be doing a final sale on that, and we're going to migrate to a new website, and then the sales will go through like an Amazon or something like that. You can also see me on Board Games Insider. I mentioned that before. That's with Ignacy Chevicek, the president of Portal Games, and myself. And we basically talk about the industry. We take questions from our guild on Board Game Geek, take news from the industry, and of course talk a little bit about what's happening in the companies. And that's BoardGamesInsider.com, or go check out the guild on Board Game Geek. We have a Twitter feed for the company, of course. That's Stronghold Games, and Instagram as well. And if you're posting or watching the Twitter feed, I'm the one who's doing 90% of those posts. So you're talking directly to me if you catch me on Twitter. On the website, by the way, you can also sign up for the newsletter, and we keep you up to date on everything that's going on as well. So go there, sign up for the newsletter. We don't spam you. We just send you like one newsletter per month. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been fantastic. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you can do this again when like the next Doomsday occurs. I don't know.
Well, Stephen Buonocore, thank you very much.
All right, take care.
You can support the show in many ways. You can tell your friends. You can talk about it on social media. You can talk about it in your own blog, podcast, or video. Or you can support it directly by going to patreon.com/5G4D for a rolling donation, or for a one-off donation, hitting the PayPal link at the bottom of the website, 5gamesfordoomsday.com. It's these donations that keep the show going. Also, if you want to say something nice about the show, or if you want to say something horrible about the show, you can contact me on Twitter at 5gamesfordoomsday, or send me an email at 5gamesfordoomsday@gmail.com. And if I've managed to moonwalk away from the door-to-door sales skeletons and the fact that random chance hates me, I'll see you in 2 weeks for another 5 Games for Doomsday.